OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's say good morning to Stephen Rochford. Stephen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm excited about this, I have to say. This is one of those rare opportunities where we actually feel like somebody might be able to beat the Dubs. And I don't know, maybe we're wrong about that. What's your instinct, Stephen?
Well, I do think that, each year over the last probably 5 or 6 years, a Mayo Dublin game offers that glimmer of hope for all us mere mortals that are trying to beat Dublin over the first part of a decade. But I do think Mayo going into this year, I genuinely feel that they're nearly playing better than they were going into the All-Ireland final last year. I think that just the All-Ireland semi-final last year, I just felt that whilst they ran up a big score against Tipperary, some of them were coughed up scores that you wouldn't typically get against a team of their peers. And I thought against Galway, whilst they may have gone through a little bit of a rocky part in the earlier part of the first half, I thought come half time, I felt that once they got their running game together, that would take care of it. And I do think that it's their pace that I don't think Dublin have come up against that this year. But it is part of sort of that glimmer of hope or something that sort of each and every team that comes up against Dublin are trying to find something that maybe they haven't been as accustomed to. But over the last number of years, they've always found an answer. But there is a quiet confidence. Certainly, there's nobody booking hotels or anything like that for September. But there's a confidence that the team are in a good place.
The only reason Mayo people aren't booking hotels is because the final could be pushed back again, Stephen, and they don't know the specific date. The idea that you bring up there is an interesting one. I guess it's been a rarity to have a really tough encounter regularly over the course of the last couple of years, given the fact that it's been a completely knockout championship. We've seen it with Dublin. They haven't got a proper test in Leinster this year. And maybe we were undervaluing just how important that Galway experience was for Mayo a few weeks back.
Yeah, well, I'd say in fairness to someone that me would feel that they gave them a bit of a rattle. But at the same time, probably would think that Dublin, they never looked like losing the game. Yes, the margin of how much they were in the lead was pulled back. But I get the part around Dublin seemed to be so uncontrolled, it seemed untested. But there's also part of that argument maybe to sort of say, were Dublin always getting ready for August? Was that always their aim? They'd never say that publicly, but have they been getting themselves ready to peak for a 2-week period in August, which potentially could be 3 weeks now, as we know. But in that, the Galway game and the manner in which Mayo went about that, I think was very positive. But I think that the foundations that Mayo laid in that game, in relation to what they did both on their own kick-out and what they did on the Galway kick-out, it will not be that easy against Dublin. Dublin will have, their own setups, their own plays off that to both, target Mayo kick-out, but also, wary that Mayo come with a good press on their own kick-out. So primary possession will be, as it always is, but it will be absolutely key. If Mayo don't really get a real handle around the middle of the field, both half-back line, half-forward line, and the two guys in the middle of the field, that's going to become a problem, because Mayo need to be able to mix up their game from a running and a kicking game. They need to be able to do that, because an Aidan playing in and out from the edge of the square will give them that kicking option. But it's what Tommy Conroy and Ryan O'Donoghue play their best football, and is some early ball. But you have to balance that with the Paddy Durcan, the Owen McLaughlin, the Oisin Mullen, the Lee Keegan, that Kevin McLaughlin, Matty Ruan, Jim O'Connor, that athletic, strength that can come from deep. getting that balance right, I think, is key to Mayo winning at the weekend.
On the kick-out, Stephen, it is maybe Meath was a real test, as you mentioned there, in fairness, that there was a good quarter of that game at least where Dublin were under a bit of pressure. But the fact really is that Evan Comerford hasn't been in a big All-Ireland Championship game from start to finish where he's really under the pump. So do you think Mayo will go extra hard on him? Do you think that the press would have existed anyway? Or how do you see him, how do you see Mayo perhaps getting into his head, or how do they try and get into his head?
Yeah, well, I do think that what you've said is fair enough in relation to a crowd and a pressure situation with something on the line. But, you know, be under no doubt that Evan Comerford has served a great apprenticeship, be it in practice games in Dublin and over, you know, league games and a couple of championship games that he's played now. You know, he's come up against formations in their practice that they'll have been replicating to what Mayo would have done, or what Kerry would have done, or a Donegal or a Tyrone over the last number of years. And he was the guy that was the opposition keeper for that. So, you know, as regards what the formation element will be, I don't think there'll be any major surprises in that, unless there's something out of a rabbit out of the hat situation. But yes, of course, the pressure situation. If Mayo can keep the heat on Dublin, get them into a negative position, maybe Mayo ahead going into the final stretch. Yes, obviously that we're going to see the true credentials of Evan Comerford dealing with that level of pressure. But as regards his skill and his ability, I don't see Evan Comerford there as being any weakness to Dublin. He's a guy that's really impressed me through club, college, and any of his opportunities in inter-county. So it's not a weakness, but yes, we haven't seen him in that cauldron. And maybe 24,000 there isn't quite the cauldron that we like to put him under pressure with 82, but it is what it is.
Stephen, the Connacht Telegraph reported last night that there are unconfirmed reports about doubts around Oisín Mullen's fitness. You know more than anybody, the rumour mill on the week of a big game just takes fire, and all of a sudden Jim McGuinness is in the changing room giving speeches at half time for you guys. So is this just the madness that goes around it? Is there always a little bit of truth in some of these? Or what's that actually like to live through?
Yeah, it's. I think, you know, as much as possible, the players will have closed that off. I know in the run into big games that we would have had down through the years, guys would have, you know, turned off certain apps off their phone, you know, deleted them off. You know, they would be under, you know, good instruction to really manage their social circle, and certainly in a COVID environment, you know, you're probably hopeful that the lads aren't engaging with sort of the outside influences. That what I mean in that, like, it's just even neighbours and friends and stuff, even maybe going for a coffee or any of that. So, you know, hopefully the rumour doesn't play out. But you know, it is something that can become a distraction as well. And certainly with a couple of days out, that's going to heat up a bit. It was around the county a bit yesterday. But you know, we'll know a lot more, I think, when we open up the programme on Saturday morning and see whether Oisín is listed in the 26, and hopefully he is.
And that's the thing, since we mentioned it earlier on, we've had counter rumours suggesting that everything's grand, don't worry about it. So it's rumour and counter rumour, literally, probably until the squad is named, and if he's in the squad, hopefully he starts and he's fit and raring to go, because he has become a key player already.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that I sort of noticed in Oisín this year is, you know, COVID has served him well from a point of view of, in the space of even, you know, last December in the All-Ireland final to the specimen that he has turned into now. You know, it's really, really impressive, and, you know, credit to him and nutrition and the S&C guys that have obviously worked on him, and that has only added to his natural power and pace, that strength element now. And I think that's, you know, there would have been a feeling that his more natural position was that more advanced role of the half-back line. That's where he would have played his underage football, and that real strike running ability that he has is a key strength, but it's a major tool for Mayo as they go into this battle. I think with himself and Paddy Durkin and probably an Owen McLaughlin, that will give Dublin undoubtedly, and as I said at the top of the piece, they've dealt with a lot that has come at them. But I'm struggling to think over the last few years, have they come up against that level of pace and power? And you do have to have a plan for it. And it's something that Mayo, I think, last weekend when James and the management team would have been sitting down to sort of say, right, where are we going to give Dublin trouble? The half-back line was certainly an area which they felt that Dublin were going to have their homework really well done.
Stephen, there seems to be a general school of thought that the peak of Dublin came around 16-17 direction when you came up against them. Where do you think this Dublin team is in comparison to that Dublin team?
Yeah, so I think in fairness, the team's evolved. Like the Mayo team of 2017, I think I was counting last night that there might only be four guys that started the All Ireland final in 17, and maybe likely to start at the weekend. Now, obviously, Killian being injured, and then there were a couple of guys, the Conor Loftuses and Jim O'Connors and the Stephen Coens that could all start at the weekend that played as subs. But Dublin have evolved because they continue to produce quality players. But as they probably look into this weekend and who's going to start for them, you're probably looking at maybe a Paddy Small, a Niall Scully, who had played, I think, every game in 2017, started, should I say, every game by the All-Ireland final, and maybe Sean McMahon. Their team is still quite solid, and in that, I understand that people are sort of saying in relation to Dublin that maybe they're on the decline. I would be far away from that position. I think as that team has matured and has sort of got to understand, what's coming up against them. They're just controlling the game, and that isn't what I suppose the neutral supporters or people they're looking at the game want to see. They want to see tackles and the ball breaking and that. But that's not up to Dublin to instigate that. They're looking about, and certainly in a championship that is a knockout. 1 point wins are fine. You don't need to be winning games by 10, 11, 12 points. You can't bring any of that margin into the next game. And I do think Dublin, their team looks as strong to me as it did 3 or 4 years ago. And yes, probably the argument that people can make is that their bench doesn't look as strong, as maybe when Bernard and Kevin McManaman and, Jim McConnelly were coming off of Paul Flynn. But that's because, those guys had accumulated a couple of All-Irelands. But come this weekend, you could see Sean Bugler on the bench who started last year's All-Ireland. You may see a Cormac Costa or a Paddy Small. One of them, I think, could end up on the bench. Cullen Basquel, who's played in a couple of All-Irelands. Obviously, and then you start to build out 3 or 4. Philly McMahon is still there. So there's still a lot of quality and experience in that Dublin squad. And, if they win this weekend, that's another bunch of young guys on the bench that are starting to pick up all Irelands and building experience. So I think, in fairness, I don't see them on a decline, to be perfectly honest. I just probably see them having evolved further in relation to just controlling the game and really looking to suck out the oxygen of opposition or what they bring to them.
The obvious answer to this question would be the age profile, Stephen, because I was just going to ask, why have they made that evolution?
Yeah, well, I think that it probably started out of the 2014 defeat to Donegal, and whilst Dublin and the Dublin Mayo game, we used to reference it sometimes, in a frustrating way, as it was like a game of tennis. It's sort of up and down, and you could at times you could get a bit of whiplash looking at it from left to right. And Dublin always had that way about them. But I think after 2014, when that sort of that blanket and Tyrone obviously were fastening that down, and it came to 2017, and they looked to really have mastered in that 2017 game that field sports have evolved now to a sort of control and a possession type game. And if you're in possession, it means you're not having to defend. It means that you're not under pressure. And the stats that sort of run in your favour to control games and win them, when you're in possession, you control all of them. So I think it's been a natural thing for that to happen. And you're seeing other teams, when they're now in possession, controlling it and getting those percentage shots off. I think if you were to look at some of the heat maps with Dublin around their shots, they typically don't score from the wings. They're very patient. They penetrate through the middle. They probably score a little bit on the wings, really, from their frees, but they just work the percentages time and time again. And there's probably a bit of the basketball influence on that. But it shows, I think, as well, just how smart they are and how cohesive as a forward unit that they can be. And even last year, when we were looking at and people sort of saying now, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. Last year I felt that the performances was about, that death by 1,000 cuts. Probably take the Meath Leinster final out of it, but through Cavan, through Mayo, they just tap the ball over the bar. When the goal opportunity comes, they're usually just hammering it into the back of the net, because they don't score goals of the season. They don't score the Daniel Flynn goal, because they're just based on their process. And I know people don't like to hear that, and it becomes a little bit boring. But when you're working on team cohesion, you have to stick to that.
Myself and Tommy Rooney have a bet about who is actually going to end up on the bench. Which of those forwards would you like, if you were in Desi's shoes, would you like to be looking at the bench and going with 15 minutes left to go, this game's in the melting pot, I want to bring them in? Is it pace in Paddy Small? Is it the anger of Cormac Costello? Is it the experience and the game management of Dean Rock?
No, I think Dean Rock starts for you. I think he's your go-to free taker. So for me, Dean Rock starts, and I think I think Paddy Small starts insofar as he gives you that balance with that left-footed kicker, brings another bit of pace to that inside forward line. And I think and it's look, you can use the word it's unfair. It's more unfortunate, I think, because when you're picking, when you only have to pick 15, I think fair and unfair don't come into it. You pick what you feel is your strongest team and your strongest options. And Cormac Costello, I think, is familiar to that role. He won't like that being said, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I mean it from the point of view of his experience, being able to know what's expected coming off the bench, how to create frees, create simple scoring chances. And I think in the overall, that cohesion element, I think they will look to push Brian Howard forward as a bit of an option of being able to, I suppose, challenge the Mayo half back line to defend, but also using his pace and athleticism to be able to curb that forward running. And while Paddy Small has played out there a little bit, I don't think it's his natural instinct or strength to be a defensive half forward. And I think Brian Howard and Niall Scully have that more in their natural game.
Everything you're saying here today, Stephen, is kind of giving me the sense that there is a bang of Kerry 2009 off this Dublin team, that there is a massive performance coming in a really big game, and it could be this weekend.
Yeah, I do have that worry that there is a big performance coming. I just sort of have had this sense through the league that Dublin were building towards, getting right for August. Now, we could be as far out as a lighthouse. We don't really know, but that's what they were getting towards. And they have all their team. As well, look, I know Kevin McMahon and Philly McMahon, there may be, what's their preparation been like. But I mean, as regards who you would see being their starting team, John Small, Owen Merchant back, having game time under them in the Leinster final, they're back to having options. And yeah, that is a little bit of a worry and coming to peak. And I think, as you said, probably Kerry came totally in under the radar. They're not as much Dublin, where their form hasn't been of a trend line to sort of say, wow, that's a worry, because they have just so much quality, experience, and big game players.
All right, Stephen, enjoy the game, whatever happens. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, lads.